that we saw. You remember Luton and Millwall? You wouldn't have seen that,
No, I
but
haven't seen that, no.
no, yeah, the police seeming powerless to stop it, and as if they have some kind of.
I mean,
they want to inflict punishment
the thing is,
on
it doesn't
football.
happen anywhere else in Europe. Okay, it happens elsewhere in Europe, but not on a regular basis, not to the same extent as we have it here.
Do you think that's because the police are more severe? Terry, in
Severe,
Spain, you were saying that.
They're just frightened out of their life. They just can't do it. And if there was just one incident, it's nipped in the bud, you see, but we've not nipped it in the bud, and it's got bigger, and it's got bigger until, as what we're talking about, it's got completely out of control. And now it is a hell of a problem to solve it.
Yeah.
But it's the fear factor is the thing. Anywhere in Europe, they're frightened out of the life of the police. And the police hands seem to be tied here.
Yeah. Are the police as severe in Italy?
Yeah, I mean, there's no... It's the same situation. If they do it, I mean, there's the Juventus players on the track. They just nip it in the bud. I mean, there's no... If someone steps out of line, they get punished right away.
Yeah. And they're too frightened to do it again.
It looks
that's
here as
Cabrini.
if
That's Cabrini.
Yeah, that's Cabrini, and it looks as if the Juventus players are appealing to the fans to just calm down and enable them to get the match played, because one wonders what would happen now if the match was put off, because then you have another problem. The people having travelled all that way.
I think the fact that they've sent for paratroopers suggests that they're, I mean, to me anyway, maybe they're not going to play it. I mean, maybe they're going to try and keep one set of supporters in the ground, let the other go home. But you're going to have the same problem in the city tonight, when they play it or if they don't play it. After the game, both sets of supporters are going to be in the city after the game.
So it is virtually an impossible situation, really, for anybody to decide what is the right course of action. In fact, whatever is done is going to appear to be wrong.
That's right.
The Red Cross at the stadium say that 30 killed and 100 are seriously injured in hospital. With so much trouble, it doesn't seem feasible, really, for players to come out and play a game in that atmosphere.
It's a game of football. I mean,
Graham's just saying about parents worrying if their sons are okay. It's almost like you're talking about them going off to war.
I mean, that's what it's come to when our teams go to Europe now. But once again, it's a minority, and so many innocent people get caught up in it.
I think Barry Davis weighed it very well. It's a severe embarrassment for everyone, and now it's gone beyond that. It's a tragic. Now it's tragic. Now it's tragic.
Would you recommend, I mean, I know it would mean a change of law, and so many of these things do depend on the way the government reacts to it, the taking away of passports in circumstances like this of people who have been proved to be guilty?
I'd like to do more than that, Jim. I think I just feel absolutely...
But that step hasn't even been taken. I mean, those that came back from Finland, was it, were suspended from 5 years for going to Finland, which is not very much of a punishment, is it, in those circumstances? Although 100 were put in jail over there, that was the last time out. Do you think the passport thing could be a deterrent?
But you're talking about, now we're talking about people being killed tonight. Now we've got to say beforehand that if people are going to get caught for doing that, and we've got video cameras, we can catch them, the mother can't say my Jimmy wouldn't do it, because we can say, look, your Jimmy's just beaten hell out of little Johnny there, and it's on the, and he's got to go away for 10 years or whatever. That's going to stop them. They won't do it again, and it's fear is the key. You've got to frighten them, because now we're talking about passports if it was nipping it in the bud. We're now talking about a severe major problem, and it is quite sickening, obviously, to everybody that's watching these pictures here this evening.
Well, I always felt that they continue to do it because they get away with it unpunished, and the Cambridge justice seemed to be the first time, really, that they were really dealt with in a severe way.
Then again, people were shocked by that.
The fact that they were punished so severely.
But there's no fear in anything, hardly, is there? They're not frightened of the policemen anymore. And I feel sorry for the policemen in some respects. They don't get a chance to sort it out, and it's got to be sorted out.
I mean, the police catch them. They're doing the job, and then they go to court, and then you get these magistrates give them 25 quid fines.
Exactly.
So you would like to see the sort of punishment
severe as it can possibly be. It can't be severe enough, because that now is past anything else I've ever seen. And I haven't got the words to explain how I feel tonight. And I'm sure everybody feels the same.
We came here to talk about a game of football.
Yeah, we kept talking about lovely things about the game, and all of a sudden we're faced with this terrible thing.
It's taking some people's lives away from them and destroying the livelihood of others, because it's your profession, in a way, and it's the profession of a lot of people in this
people
country.
say, well, it's easy for Terry and I to talk about English teams or British teams being banned from Europe because we're no longer involved with British teams. But I see that as the only answer. I mean, and the way the game is in England today, the team just can't afford to do without European football because there's so much money involved. But I think that's what it's going to come to, Jimmy. I can't see another way out of it.
In fact, through being out of England, you probably see it in some ways more clearly. You get it in perspective.
Terry's in Spain, I'm in Italy. I mean, there's no one, they're fanatics the same as our supporters are. I mean, in a different way. They're more inclined to outshout each other or have a bigger flag than other supporters. They don't want to be tearing each other's heads off like our supporters seem to want to do.
They have announced, that is the announcement saying that the game will commence, but we're not sure at what time it will commence. I think what they're going to do is to get absolute control of the crowd and then attempt to play the match. But it is an awful task to try and turn your mind back to a game of football. I find it so, sitting here.
Well, it's just we're all shocked, and we might be saying the right things or the wrong things. There's people out there have got to make fast decisions who are not really perhaps ready for, even though you should always when there's a British team involved. And yet, as you said earlier, whatever decision they make now, it's going to be wrong, because Graham says they're going to worry about what's going to happen in the city. In a beautiful place like Brussels, they're going to be terrified.
So you wonder what the response will be when the supporters, and sooner or later, before the game finishes, they'll find out that people have died. Now you wonder what's going to happen then. I mean, they can go one of two ways. They can even become more hostile and more violent, or they take the correct way out and behave like human beings. I mean, that's open for argument again.
Quite a few people suggest that it's sometimes the fault of players on the field, but of course this match hasn't started. But it does put an enormous amount of pressure on those players if the game does start. They've got to compete. They weren't going out there in gentle fashion to win this match, either of them, and neither should they really at this stage of the competition.
That's
so
right.
They're under extra pressure now, Terry.
Yes, they are. It'd be interesting to know what would you say, Graham, that Joe Fagan, knowing the sort of bloke he was, what would he be saying now to the team?
Well, I think they'll try and keep the fact that people have died away from them, because I know the lads, and that would worry them. I'm not saying that because of friends of mine, but I know it would worry them. I'm sure it would worry the Juventus players as well. So they'll be trying to keep that away from them. The dressing room, they'll be laughing and joking in there. But, it's just taking so much away from the game.
I'm sure if we find it difficult to talk about it over those pictures because of shame and sadness and all kind of other emotions, a player would find it extremely difficult to produce his best under those conditions.
He certainly would feel that before the game starts. I think once the game starts, I think that you'd get into the game and they'd be worried again about it afterwards. But I think once the game goes, you'll see a game very close to what we would have seen normally. But
yeah.
Also bearing in mind that Graham said that they might keep this information away from the teams anyway.
Yeah. It doesn't seem, and I think we should make this clear, that the injuries and deaths were a result of direct fighting, but of the wall collapsing.
Well, we don't know, do we?
No, we don't know, but it does seem that. But of course it is the aggression that brings about a situation where a wall does collapse.
That's right.
Well, let's go back to Brussels and get an up-to-date report now from Barry Davis.
Well, Jimmy, we're seeing pictures of the start of the whole problem. These are recorded pictures as some Liverpool supporters moved into the Juventus area. You can see the Juventus supporters trying to get over the wall to our right. Some of them are moving away at the top of the picture and down towards the running track. And it was the pressure of movement down towards the running track which resulted in the wall giving way and people being pinned underneath it. Just look at one or two of these faces. They're faces of fear, frightened people who just don't understand what has happened. And really, there's such an overwhelming feeling here, sitting in the stand, watching these pictures from earlier, looking at the stadium now, a feeling of total helplessness, a feeling of sympathy for those who've been killed and injured, a sympathy for people who love to watch their sport, a sympathy for the game of football, which was one of those things to unite people, which is now in an extraordinary way become, amongst a minority, some sort of substitute for war. That people go to watch football matches to defend their ground, to stand up for their team. I mean, I heard Jimmy refer earlier to the Luton Millwall situation. That was all the results of territory being defended and of what had happened at another London ground a few weeks earlier. It had nothing to do with the cup tie itself, I don't believe, at Luton. And this is just a scene of total mayhem that resulted from people deciding that it was important to them to invade the opposition territory. And as a result of that attitude, that anger, that demand to be seen to be the tough guys, and whatever you want to call them, 28 people, we're now told, are dead, and many others are injured and being taken to hospital, and presumably some of those injured are in a serious state. We've been told that the match will go on, and I really don't think UEFA had any other choice. I mean, there are people waiting in this ground, and the one thing that can take away the mind, if only briefly, from the incidents that we've seen, from the injured, and the overwhelming sympathy, as I said, for those who have died. For the moment, at least, football will, we hope, become a unifying bond. And there is an enormous responsibility on the players now, if they possibly can, to put it out of their mind and to make it an attractive game, and to try and show that they believe, as the majority believe, that football is one of the most beautiful and simple games, and has been all around the world. And now suddenly it's been besmirched because of an attitude which a decade and more ago was totally foreign to the British character, but which now has grown until it is a cancer on society. These are still recordings of the scenes earlier, and looking down at the wall that gave way, the people who sought refuge in the only place they could go to, which in the present climate of debate at home, it should once again be said that the fact that there were fences that could be got through and people got onto the pitch, that perhaps saved even greater injury. Still, the policemen on horseback are on the main running track. Let me emphasize again, this is not a continuing battle. These are pictures that we are seeing, recorded pictures of the incidents which led to the trouble and the result of that trouble. At one end of the ground, as I look now, we have mounted police. On the home straight by the stand, we have mounted police, but in riot uniform. And one has to say that the policemen at the Juventus end are conspicuous by their absence. It's a lovely still summer's evening, but one which will be remembered for all the wrong reasons, and by those whose family has suffered from it. It will be an evening that will never be forgotten. There will be people here who will never go and watch a football match again, and there will be people watching these scenes who will say, I don't want to go and watch a football match. But it is not football's problem. Football is the scene which has been used because it is such a popular and the national game. Photographers still getting their shots. It's a sad story, Jim, but I just hope that we will have a football match here shortly, and it does seem as though, as every second goes by, the chances of that are improving.